All right, we got the former House manager during the Clinton impeachment trial, Bob Barr. He says he really doesn't see what amounts to an impeachable offense here. He's been of that mindset for quite some time here, and he joins us now. Congressman, it's always an honor to have you. Thank you for taking the time.
My pleasure, Neil.
All right, so let's assess where we stand. I guess the big debate, and it's an ongoing one, and a heated one, as you know, that if the president tied anything to aid with the country of Ukraine to this investigation. Some Republicans have gone so far as to say even if he did, there's nothing there. And they're disputing it back and forth whether he even did in the first place. What are your thoughts?
That is my position exactly. The president is entitled to and absolutely should tie U.S. aid to those things that would otherwise adversely affect U.S. security, U.S. relations, and U.S. law. And if, in fact, the president believed that there was meddling in the U.S. election by the Ukraine, that is certainly a legitimate area for him to inquire about. If he, in fact, believes that a former U.S. official, namely the vice president of the United States, improperly intervened in Ukraine in a way that affects U.S. interests, that is entirely a legitimate area of inquiry also. And simply because Biden might then later become a candidate does not insulate him from an investigation.
Then what do you make, Congressman, of this middle ground? I call it middle ground. It might not even be necessary or even relevant now. That maybe censor the president. It's a way to ameliorate both sides, to address their concerns, to say the president went too far. Of course, the question is whether the president would even agree to that. It might not matter. But do Republicans even have to entertain that? What do you think?
I don't think they should. The same thing came up during the Clinton impeachment. There were some Republicans on our side who urged that. But it really doesn't mean anything at the end of the day. It is simply a political move.
But I remember in your case you did not. So why not then, and apparently why not now?
Well, back in our case, in 1998, there were very clear violations of U.S. law that were laid out that formed the basis for the impeachment. In this case, there is nothing even approaching that. So given the fact that the Democrats are still flailing around trying to find something on which to impeach the president, I don't think that the Republicans ought to entertain any middle ground because the other side has simply not made out a case.
You know what's interesting, too, Congressman? They have this measure that they're approving to keep the government lights on, I guess, through December 20th, rather than shut the government down right now. So it's another reminder of how this distraction, whatever you want to call it, jeopardizes getting constructive stuff done. Then we have the separate issue where Nancy Pelosi says it is very unlikely a USMCA vote on trade with Canada and Mexico can come up by the end of the year. So maybe they're reading that and saying, uh-oh.
Well, if they are reading the tea leaves, and the tea leaves, that is the voters and interests around the country are telling them we want to get some things done, and there's a whole range of issues, even in addition to those few that you mentioned, and they're looking for some fig leaf to try and extricate themselves from this impeachment morass and actually do something. I suppose that would be a worthwhile effort.
Sir, it's always good catching up with you. I appreciate your historic role in this country and guiding us through maybe whatever happens now. Good seeing you.
Thanks, Neil.